The great royal hall stood silent. Tall pillars rose toward a high ceiling made of smooth crystal stone. Soft light flowed across the walls, changing color as it reflected the banners of many worlds. Representatives from distant systems stood in long rows, their movements careful, their voices quiet. No one wished to break the moment. The doors at the far end of the hall opened. Princess Alara stepped inside. She moved slowly with calm control. Her posture was straight, her face steady. She wore no heavy crown, only a simple band of silver resting across her head. Yet everyone present felt her authority. She was known across many worlds as wise and fair. She had ruled with patience, not fear. With listening, not force. As she walked forward, the court bowed. Alara acknowledged them with a small nod, nothing more. She had learned long ago that power did not need loud display. Her eyes moved across the room, taking in the gathered figures. Ambassadors, advisors, observers, allies, strangers. She had seen many courts like this before on many worlds. They all looked the same in moments like this, full of pride, careful words, and hidden thoughts. Then her gaze reached the back of the hall. There, standing slightly apart from the others, was a human. His name was Caleb. He wore a plain uniform, clean but worn at the edges. His hands were folded behind his back, his stance relaxed but respectful. He did not push forward. He did not seek attention. He stood where he had been told to stand and waited. Most in the hall barely noticed him. Humans were still new to these gatherings. Useful allies, some said. Fragile ones, others whispered. They were often polite, often quiet, and rarely treated as important voices among ancient powers. Caleb was used to that. He watched the princess approach the central platform. Like the others, he bowed his head when she passed. To him, this was just another formal meeting. Another long session of words and promises. He expected nothing unusual. Alara slowed her steps as she neared the center. For a moment, her expression did not change. Then her eyes met his. Her breath caught. The hall did not notice. No one saw the small pause. No one heard the quiet sound she made as memory struck her like a sudden wave. Fire. Smoke. A broken sky. She saw it all again, clear as if it were happening now. A distant world long ago. Not a royal world. Not a safe one. A place torn by conflict and confusion. Sirens. Shouting. The ground shaking beneath her feet. She had been younger then. Not a princess. Just a daughter. Just a girl. She remembered running. Falling. Pain spreading through her side. She remembered the sound of ships lifting away, leaving dust and heat behind. She remembered lying still, afraid to move. And she remembered thinking she had been left. Alara's fingers tightened slightly at her side. The human before her was older now. Lines marked his face. His hair showed threads of gray. But she knew him. She would have known him anywhere. Caleb did not recognize her. How could he? She looked nothing like the injured girl he had carried through smoke all those years ago. She wore the calm mask of a ruler now. Strength shaped by time and duty. Alara forced herself to keep walking. She took her place at the platform and turned to face the court. Her expression returned to calm. Her breathing slowed. Years of training helped her hide the storm inside. The court session began. Voices rose one by one. Formal greetings. Polite praise. Discussions of trade and borders. Caleb listened as he always did, his mind wandering slightly as speeches dragged on. He did not notice the way the princess sometimes paused between words. He did not notice how often her gaze returned to the back of the hall. Alara listened, but only part of her was present. Another part was far away, trapped in a memory she had never shared. She remembered waking in pain, half-conscious, dragged across rough ground. She remembered a voice speaking softly in a language she did not know. Come. Steady. Human. She remembered hands that did not shake. She remembered being afraid, and then, slowly, not being afraid anymore. She had never learned his name then. She had been taken away before she could ask. Before she could say anything at all. For years, she believed she would never see him again. Yet here he stood. Unaware. Uncelebrated. Unrecognized. The thought made something tighten in her chest. Caleb shifted his weight slightly, unaware of the attention he was drawing. He glanced around the hall, noting the careful movements of guards, the quiet power in the room. He wondered how long the session would last. He did not think about the past. To him, that rescue had been just one of many moments. One injured child among many lives he had tried to save. He had not known who she was then. He had not expected thanks. He had simply done what felt right. Alara knew this. That was what made it matter. The session continued. The court listened. Recorded. Agreed. But something had already changed. A quiet thread now connected the past to the present, stretching across years and stars, pulling two lives back into the same moment. Princess Elara stood tall before the gathered worlds, her voice steady, her expression calm. But inside she was no longer only a ruler. She was the girl who had been saved. And she had finally found the human who stayed. The voices of the court rose and fell in steady rhythm. Formal words filled the great hall, careful and polished. Each speaker followed tradition, offering greetings, promises, and measured praise. The sounds echoed softly against the tall walls, blending into something distant and dull. Princess Elara stood at the center platform, her hands resting calmly before her. To those watching, she appeared fully present, listening with the attention expected of a ruler. But her eyes kept returning to the same place. The human at the back of the hall. Caleb stood quietly, his posture relaxed but respectful. He did not speak. He did not move unless required. His gaze followed the speakers, his expression neutral, patient. He looked like someone used to waiting. Elara's chest tightened. The hall around her began to fade. In its place, another world took shape. Dust filled the air. The ground shook beneath her feet. Warning lights flashed red across broken stone walls. The evacuation sirens screamed, sharp and endless. She was younger then. Smaller. She had been running with others, her breath short, her heart racing. Orders were shouted. Paths were blocked. Smoke burned her eyes. She remembered falling. Pain had spread through her side, hot and deep. She tried to stand, but her body would not obey. Around her, feet rushed past. No one stopped. They were not cruel. They were afraid. They were following orders. She remembered calling out. Her voice had been weak, lost beneath the noise. Then the ships lifted off. The ground trembled as engines roared overhead. Dust rained down. The sky burned bright as the last transport rose and disappeared. She had been left behind. The memory always ended there. But now, standing in the court, Elara remembered what came next. She remembered the silence after the ships were gone. The way fear settled into her chest like a heavy stone. She remembered trying to move and failing. She remembered thinking this was how it ended. Then she heard footsteps. Slow. Careful. She had thought she was imagining them. Elara's gaze sharpened as she watched Caleb in the present. He shifted slightly, adjusting his stance. The movement was small, familiar. Her breath caught again. That was how he had walked back then. In the memory, the footsteps had stopped near her. She remembered opening her eyes and seeing a shape through the dust. A figure crouching down. A human. She remembered thinking he would leave too. Everyone else had. But he didn't. In the court, a speaker paused, waiting for approval. Elara nodded automatically. Her voice responded with practiced grace, but her mind stayed far away. In the past, the human had spoken to her. His words meant nothing to her at the time, but his voice had been calm, steady. He had not sounded afraid. He had not sounded rushed. He had checked her injuries with careful hands. He had spoken softly, even when alarms echoed in the distance. She remembered grabbing his sleeve, afraid he would stand and go. He had stayed. Others had passed nearby. She remembered voices arguing, warning him about time, about danger, about orders. He had ignored them. Elara's fingers curled slightly. That choice had changed everything. In the present, Caleb listened as the court discussed borders and cooperation. His thoughts drifted. He noticed the princess glance his way again and felt a brief flicker of confusion. He looked around, wondering if someone else stood behind him. No one did. He shifted his weight, uncomfortable, and looked back toward the front. Elara saw the confusion cross his face. He truly did not remember. That did not hurt the way she once thought it might. It made the moment purer. In the memory, she felt herself being lifted. The pain had flared and she had cried out. The human had tightened his grip and spoken again, firmer this time, as if promising something. She remembered the heat of fire nearby. The way the air vibrated with danger. She remembered thinking he would drop her. He never did. In the court, Elara took a slow breath. She steadied herself. The formal session continued. Names were spoken. Agreements recorded. The audience listened with polite focus. But Elara's heart beat faster. She studied Caleb closely now, taking in details she had missed at first. The tired set of his shoulders. The small scar along his jaw. The way his hands bore marks of old injuries. These were hands that had carried many people. These were hands that had saved her. In the memory, the world had blurred as she drifted in and out of awareness. She remembered waking briefly on a transport. Bright lights. Strange machines. Human faces moving fast. She remembered searching for him. He was not there. She had cried then, thinking she had imagined him. Years passed before she learned the truth. Reports. Records. A human unit delayed evacuation to recover a single injured civilian. A medic listed as injured during extraction. A name buried deep in old files. Kill. The memory ended as the past and present finally aligned. Alara straightened. The next speaker finished and stepped back. It would soon be her turn to address the court. Tradition demanded careful words. Neutral language. Safe distance. But Alara already knew that tradition would not survive this moment. She looked once more at the human in the back. Others had followed orders and moved on. One human had stayed. That human was Caleb. And for the first time since the day she was saved, Alara knew she could finally speak the truth out loud. The hall quieted as the final speaker stepped back. All eyes turned to Princess Alara. This was the moment everyone expected her to follow tradition. She would speak of unity, balance, shared borders, and careful peace. Her words would be measured and safe, shaped to offend no one. She stood still for a long moment. Too long. A soft movement passed through the court. Some shifted their feet. Others exchanged quick looks. Silence stretched, thin and uneasy. Then Alara stepped forward. Her voice when she spoke was calm but different. "I will not speak of trade today," she said. The court froze. "I will not speak of power or borders or advantage." Her eyes moved slowly across the hall, not stopping on the rulers or the honored seats, but on the many faces gathered there. Soldiers, advisors, observers, those who followed orders and those who gave them. "I will speak of a day when I had none of those things," Alara continued. "A day when I had no title, no protection, no voice that mattered." The silence deepened. Caleb felt a strange tightening in his chest. He straightened slightly, unsure why. Alara took a breath. "Long ago," she said, "on a world far from here there was an evacuation. It was fast. It was chaotic. Everyone was afraid. Images formed above the platform, soft and faint. A dusty ground. Flashing warning lights. Smoke drifting through broken air. I was young," Alara said. "I was injured. I could not stand." Her voice did not shake. "I lay on the ground and watched ships leave without me." A ripple moved through the court. Some leaned forward. Others stiffened. "I do not blame them," Alara continued. "They followed orders. They followed rules. They believed there was no time." She paused. "But when the last ship left, I was still alive." The images shifted. A small figure on the ground. Smoke clearing. Silence settling. "I was unseen," Alara said. "Unimportant. A loss already counted." Caleb's breath caught. The memory rose without warning. Not clear, not complete, but familiar. Thus, a shape on the ground. He told himself it was coincidence. Alara's eyes moved slowly to the back of the hall. "Everyone else moved on," she said. "Everyone, except one." The image changed. A human figure appeared, kneeling beside the injured girl. Gasps echoed through the court. "He was not powerful," Alara said. "He did not command ships or armies. He did not know who I was." Her gaze did not leave Caleb now. He only knew that someone was still breathing. Caleb felt the room tilt. His heart began to race. "That human ignored rank," Alara continued. "Ignored danger. Ignored the order to leave." The image showed the human lifting the girl, fire glowing in the distance. "He chose compassion," she said simply. The hall was completely silent now. No movement. No whispers. "He stayed," Alara said. "When staying meant risk. When leaving would have been easier." Caleb's hands curled slowly at his sides. The memory struck fully now. A child. Not human. Hurt badly. Too quiet. The argument in his headset. The countdown. The warning lights. His own voice saying, "I'm not leaving her." Alara's voice softened. "I remember thinking I was dreaming," she said. "I remember his voice even though I did not understand his words. I remember how calm he was. How steady his hands were." The image showed the human shielding the girl as debris fell. "He carried me through fire," Alara said. "Through fear. Through chaos." Caleb swallowed hard. Around him, others stared openly now. Some turned to look at him. Others looked back at Alara, stunned. "I lived because of that choice," Alara said. "Not because of a treaty. Not because of a fleet." She placed one hand over her chest. "But because one human refused to leave a stranger behind." The images faded, leaving only the great hall and the princess standing tall at its center. Alara straightened fully now. For years, she said, I wondered if that human knew what his choice meant. I wondered if he ever knew that the life he saved would one day stand here. Her eyes softened. I know now, she said, that he did not save me for thanks. Or reward. Or memory. She turned slightly, addressing the entire court again. This is why humans are unsettling, Alara said. A few startled sounds followed the word. They do not always respect power, she continued. They do not always follow expectation. She paused. But they see individuals where others see numbers. Caleb felt every eye in the hall on him now. His face burned. He wanted to step back, to disappear. Alara raised her chin. I tell you this, she said, because the future we choose will depend on what we value. She looked again at Caleb. Protocol would have let me die, she said. Compassion did not. The hall remained utterly still as her words settled. No one spoke. No one moved. Princess Alara stepped back from the platform. And in that silence, the truth echoed louder than any command. One small human choice had changed the fate of a princess, and now, the thinking of many worlds. The silence did not break when Alara stepped back. It grew heavier. The great hall felt smaller now, as if every wall had moved closer. No one spoke. No one shifted. Even the guards stood frozen, unsure of what came next. Then Alara turned. Her movement was slow and clear, leaving no doubt about her intent. She faced the back of the hall, where the humans stood among delegates and observers. Caleb, she said. The sound of his name echoed. Every head turned. Caleb froze. For a brief moment he was sure he had misheard. No one important ever spoke his name in places like this. He looked around, half expecting another human to step forward. No one did. Alara raised her hand slightly. The human named Caleb, she said again. A path opened through the crowd without anyone thinking to move it. Delegates stepped aside, eyes wide. Whispers began, low and confused. Caleb's heart pounded. His feet felt heavy as he stepped forward, one careful step at a time. He kept his head low, unsure where to look. This was not his world. Not his place. He stopped several steps from the platform. Come closer, Alara said gently. He obeyed. When he reached the center of the hall, the distance between them felt strange. She stood tall, wrapped in the quiet power of her position. He stood in a simple uniform, worn and plain. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Alara did something no one expected. She bowed. Not a slight nod. Not a gesture of courtesy. She lowered herself fully, her head dipping low before him. A sharp sound moved through the hall, many voices gasping at once. Royal guards stiffened in alarm. Advisors whispered urgently. Some delegates rose from their seats in shock. Caleb panicked. No, please, he said, stepping forward without thinking. You don't have to. Alara raised one hand, still bowed. I do, she said. Her voice carried clearly, calm and firm. When she straightened, her eyes met his. This court knows me as Princess Alara, she said. Ruler. Diplomat. Voice of my people. She placed a hand against her chest. But none of that exists without this human. The hall remained frozen. My life exists because he refused to leave, Alara said. My crown exists because he chose compassion over command. Caleb's mind spun. He shook his head slightly. I didn't, I just did what anyone should do. A few quiet sounds moved through the crowd at his words. Alara smiled softly. No, she said. Many did not. She turned slightly, addressing the court while keeping Caleb beside her. When I lay on that ground, she said, I was not royalty. I was not important. I was not strategic. Her voice did not rise. It did not need to. I was a stranger. She gestured toward Caleb. And he stayed. Caleb felt heat rise to his face. He remembered the moment clearly now. The fear. The warnings. The choice that had felt simple at the time. I didn't know who you were, he said quietly. I know, Alara replied. That's why it mattered. She faced the court fully now. You speak often of loyalty, she said. Of duty. Of strength. Her gaze sharpened. This is strength, she said, gesturing to Caleb. Not power taken. Power given. She stepped closer to him, close enough that only he could hear her next words. I never thank you, she said softly. Caleb swallowed. You don't need to. I want to, she replied. She stepped back and raised her voice again. This human did not save a princess, Alara said. He saved a life. She paused. And because of that, my people did not lose a future. The court finally stirred. Quiet voices spread like a ripple. Some faces showed awe, others shame. Some looked thoughtful, troubled. An elder advisor stood slowly. "Your Highness," he said carefully, this is not customary." Elara looked at him calmly. "Neither was leaving a child behind," she said. No one argued. Caleb stood still, unsure what to do with his hands, his posture, his eyes. He felt too visible, too small for the moment unfolding around him. Elara turned back to him one last time. "You never thought it mattered," she said. Caleb shook his head. "I didn't." She smiled gently. "It mattered to me." For a moment, the princess and the human stood side by side, two figures from very different worlds, connected by a single choice made long ago. The hall would remember this moment. Caleb never thought it would remember him. And yet it already had. The court did not end the session when Elara finished speaking. No one knew how. For a long moment, the great hall remained still. Then the record keepers moved. Quietly. Carefully. Their devices lit up as they began to store what had just happened, not as rumor or story but as history. A name was entered. Caleb. Not with a title. Not with rank. Just his name. That alone was unusual. From that day forward, the records would say that a human named Caleb changed the course of a royal line without ever knowing it. Discussions followed in the days after. Long ones. Private ones. Representatives spoke with different tones now. Less pride. More thought. Old agreements were reviewed. New ones formed, slowly but firmly. Humans were no longer described as minor allies. They were described as dependable. Respect grew not from fear but from understanding. Caleb stayed only as long as duty required. He did not attend the celebrations held in quiet halls after the court ended. He declined formal thanks. He avoided attention as best he could. When the final meeting ended, he packed his few belongings and prepared to leave. Elara met him once more before his departure. They stood in a simple chamber overlooking the city. Light flowed between tall buildings, soft and warm. Air traffic moved in gentle lines far below. "I will not ask you to stay," Elara said. Caleb nodded. "I wouldn't know what to do if I did." She smiled at that. "You changed my life," she said. He shifted slightly. "I just helped someone who needed it." "That is the lesson," Elara replied. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Caleb bowed, awkward and unsure, and turned to leave. He returned home quietly. No crowds waited for him. No medals. No songs. He went back to simple work, helping where he could, living the same way he always had. If people asked about the court, he gave short answers. It was something, he would say. He never spoke of bows or history. Years passed. Elara ruled with steady hands and open ears. When advisors urged force, she asked about cost. When generals spoke of losses, she asked for names. When decisions were hard, she remembered a human who stayed when leaving was easier. Her people prospered. And across many worlds the story spread, not loudly, not as legend, but as truth. That sometimes the greatest power is choosing not to walk away. Time moved forward, quiet and steady, the way it always does after moments that feel too large to hold. Caleb's life returned to its old rhythm. He woke early. He worked long hours. He helped where help was needed and stepped aside when it was not. He never spoke of the court unless asked, and even then his words stayed simple. He did not correct people when they misunderstood. He did not add weight to the story. To him, nothing about himself had changed. But the world around him had. Requests began to arrive, slowly at first. Not commands. Not demands. Invitations. Groups wanted human medics present during evacuations. Mixed crews were formed more often. Protocols were rewritten in small but important ways. One line appeared in several new agreements, written plainly and without decoration. No individual is to be abandoned while life remains. Caleb saw the line once in a shared report and paused longer than he meant to. He said nothing. On Elara's world, the change was deeper. The court still gathered. Laws were still debated. Disagreements still rose and fell. But something had shifted in how people spoke. Words like acceptable loss were used less. Questions followed them now. Faces came with numbers. Elara encouraged this without ever demanding it. When advisors asked why she insisted on slower evacuations or extra rescue passes, she answered simply. Because someone once stayed, she would say. She did not need to explain further. Young officers studied the history records. They read Caleb's name again and again, always without title, always without rank. Some found it confusing. Others found it comforting. It meant anyone could matter. Elara sometimes stood alone on her balcony late at night, looking out over the city lights. The wind was gentle there. The noise distant. In those moments she allowed herself to remember the fear she once felt, and the calm that followed it. She never forgot that the calm came from a single choice. Once a year she visited a quiet memorial garden within the capital. It was not large. It did not honor victories. It honored survival. Names were carved there, soldiers, civilians, strangers from many worlds. One name stood alone on a small stone. Caleb. He did not know it was there. Children visited the garden on guided walks. They were told simple stories. Not about power but about care. Not about rulers but about choices. This human stayed, the guides would say. And because of that, a princess lived. The children always asked the same question. Why? The answer was always the same. Because he could. Far away Caleb grew older. His hair turned gray. His hands grew stiff in the mornings. He trained younger medics when asked, teaching them patience more than skill. Don't rush past someone just because you're scared, he would say. Fear makes you blind. They listened. Some of them would later find themselves in dangerous places, making hard choices. And sometimes, when orders pressed hard and time felt thin, they remembered his voice. And they stayed. Caleb never connected these moments to himself. He never traced the lines outward. He simply lived. One quiet afternoon a letter arrived. It was short. Written in careful, plain language. Thanked him again. Not for the past, but for the future. Caleb folded the letter and placed it away. He did not display it. He did not speak of it. But that night he slept a little easier. Alara ruled for many years. When she finally stepped aside, her successor spoke openly of her greatest legacy. It was not territory. It was not wealth. It was a shift in how worth was measured. By lives, not outcomes. By effort, not success. By kindness, even when it cost something. When Alara grew old, she requested one last thing. That the story be told again. Not with her name first, but with his. And so it was recorded clearly, without decoration or exaggeration. A human named Caleb once chose not to leave. And the universe became slightly better because of it. The stars continued to burn. Ships continued to fly. And somewhere, someone faced a hard choice, and remembered that staying is sometimes the bravest act of all. The story did not end with crowns or courts. It ended where it began. With a simple human decision. And the quiet power of kindness.